They say Dean Martin died on Christmas Day 1995. The history books will tell you that his heart finally gave out in his Beverly Hills home, surrounded by the silence he had come to crave. The obituaries listed his movies, his songs, his jokes, and his legendary coolness. They spoke of emphysema and old age. But his friends knew the truth. They knew that the man who died in 1995 was just a shell, a ghost haunting a body that had forgotten how to live. The real Dean Martin. The man who laughed, the man who loved, the man who lit up every room he entered, actually died 8 years earlier on a snowy mountainside in California. He died on March 21, 1987, the day a telephone call brought him to his knees and ripped the soul right out of his chest. Because on that day, the king of cool didn't lose his fame, he didn't lose his money, and he didn't lose his voice. He lost his son. And when he lost his son, he lost the only reason he had to keep playing the game. This is the heartbreaking, untold story of the night the music stopped forever. This is the story of a father's silent scream that echoed for 8 long years until he finally found peace in the grave. To understand the magnitude of the tragedy that destroyed Dean Martin, you first have to understand the bond he shared with his son, Dean Paul Martin, known to the world, and to his family, simply as Dino Jr. In the constellation of the Martin family. Dino was the brightest star. He was everything Dean was and everything Dean wanted to be: handsome, talented, athletic, and possessed of that same effortless charm that made his father a legend. Dino was the golden boy. He was a tennis pro who played at Wimbledon. He was an actor who starred in films like Players and TV shows like Misfits of Science. He was a musician in the rock band Dino, Desi and Billy. But more than all of that, he was a pilot, a captain in the California Air National Guard, flying F-4 Phantom jets. To Dean, who spent his life pretending to be a drunk on stage while secretly being a devoted family man, Dino was his validation. He was proof that Dean had done something right in this crazy world. They were more than father and son, they were best friends. They played golf together, cracked jokes together, and understood each other without words. Dean, a man who famously kept everyone at arm's length and built a wall of cool no one could penetrate, lowered the drawbridge for Dino. He was the only one who truly saw the man behind the tuxedo. Dean looked at his son and saw his own immortality, a better version of himself, a future where the Martin name would shine not because of showbiz tricks, but because of genuine merit. Dino was the anchor that kept Dean grounded. When fame, the demands of Sinatra, or the hollowness of Hollywood became too much, Dean would look at his strong, brave, beautiful son serving his country and feel a pride no applause could ever match. He called him Captain. He bragged about him to anyone who would listen. "That's my boy," he'd say, pointing to a picture of Dino in his flight suit. "He flies jets. I just sing songs." It was a humble brag, and the truest thing Dean ever said. That deep, unspoken connection is what made March 1987 not just a tragedy, but a spiritual execution. March 21, 1987 began like any other Saturday in Los Angeles, but in the San Bernardino Mountains, a beast was waking. A freak snowstorm swirled around Mount San Gorgonio, the highest point in Southern California. The weather was treacherous: thick clouds, blinding snow, winds howling like banshees. Captain Dean Paul Martin and his weapons systems officer, Captain Ramon Ortiz, were scheduled for a routine training mission in an F-4C Phantom. They took off from March Air Force Base that afternoon. The mission was simple. At 1:52 p.m., Dino's jet requested a left turn to avoid towering storm clouds. The turn was approved, but in the whiteout confusion, traveling over 400 miles per hour, the jet didn't turn away from the mountain, it turned directly into it. In the blinding snow, Dino never saw it coming. One moment they were flying. The next, there was only darkness. The impact against the granite face was cataclysmic, the explosion swallowed by snow and silence. Back in Beverly Hills, the phone hadn't rung yet. Dean was unaware that his world had ended, but the radar blip vanished. Calls went unanswered. When the phone finally rang, it wasn't Dino. It was an Air National Guard official. "Mr. Martin, your son's plane is missing." For 3 days, Dean lived in hell. Storms prevented rescue teams from reaching the site. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. He chain-smoked, staring at the phone, clinging to fantasies that Dino had ejected and was waiting to be rescued. Friends called: Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Jerry Lewis, but Dean barely spoke. He prayed like a frightened child. "Take everything," he begged. "Just give me the boy." On the 3rd day, the weather broke. The wreckage was found. There was no survivor. When the confirmation came that Dino had died instantly, Dean didn't scream. He collapsed inward. The light in his eyes, the mischievous twinkle that had charmed the world for 40 years, went out. The funeral passed in a blur of military honors and weeping celebrities. Dean wore dark glasses not to look cool, but to hide dead, swollen eyes. At the grave, he touched the casket as if tucking his son in one last time. Some say he whispered, "I love you." Others believe he said, "Wait for me." After that, Dean retreated from the world. He shut the gates, stopped returning calls, stopped caring about records, ratings, or fame. He watched old westerns because in them, the world made sense. In 1988, Sinatra and Sammy tried to save him with a reunion tour. They believed applause would heal him. It didn't. On stage, Dean was lost. The spark was gone. In Chicago, he finally turned to Frank and said, "I want to go home." He walked off stage, left the tour, and checked into a hospital. The truth was simple, his soul was finished. The final years of Dean Martin's life were quiet and lonely. He kept a routine, dressing for dinner and eating at the same Italian restaurant, often asking the staff to set a place for an empty chair across from him. That chair wasn't for Frank or a woman. It was for Dino. He spent his days watching television, playing golf until he was too weak, and waiting. He once said, "I'm not afraid of dying. Everyone I love is already there." On Christmas Day 1995, Dean Martin finally let go. His lungs failed, but it was grief that had stolen his will to live. There was no struggle, just a gentle exhale. The world mourned an icon, but those who truly loved him felt relief. Somewhere beyond, the pilot had landed, and the father was waiting at the gate. Dean Martin spent his life making us laugh, but his story ended in tears. And in that tragedy lies the lesson: fame is nothing, money is dust, awards are just metal. Love is everything. He loved his son so deeply that he could not survive without him. And in that heartbreak lives his truest legacy. So the next time you hear, "That's Amore," listen closely, not just to the charm, but to the warmth, and remember the father who spent his last years staring at an empty chair, waiting for his boy to come home. Rest in peace, Dino. You finally got your wings.